So I guess just your takeaways from the speech.
Well, rather than I would title it different. Rather than restoring faith, I would say continuing the faith, because what I see a lot of positive in Governor Lou Leonguero's speech is that she's building from the successes of our administration, and we could go and looking at in many different ways. As I reviewed the speech, and I didn't have an opportunity to watch it, but I did read the text of the speech. When it comes to unemployment levels, she didn't give exact numbers, but it's nice to know that unemployment levels are going down. Started in my administration at 13%, and when I left, it was about 4.25%. So, she's continuing the trend of job growth in the island. I think in my term, we had an additional 1,500 jobs created in the private sector in my term of office, even though there was a reduction of personnel at government of Guam. So when I came in 2011, and when I left in 2019, in the agencies under my purview as governor, there was about a 500 personnel reduction in the government workforce. But there was a net positive on total workers because more workers were there at jobs in the private sector. I'm glad to hear that the apprenticeship program is successful. I am the father of the Guam apprenticeship program as a senator, but there were some major concerns that we saw, particularly with the H-2B crisis that hit, and how it's an impact on the Manpower Development Fund. Because for apprentices, they're in order to educate them, it's paid by the Manpower Development Fund. And when we had a drop off on workers, on H2 workers, it meant to a severe shortfall in the Manpower Development Fund. And good old Sam Abini at Department of Labor, she requested and asked for federal assistance in funding. And that funding that Sam got, I'm glad to see that Governor Leon Guerrero has those apprentices that are graduating based on the funds that Sam Abini found in our administration. There's other areas there, and I'm glad to see when they're talking about opening of new stations. I'm glad to see that with the Afami station opening up there for the Guam Police Department, that she's getting credit for that, and she should. But again, most of when it comes to the funding and the construction started in my administration. I'm glad to see that both in customs and in the police department, that there's the additional officers. Again, when it comes to the funding and the recruitment and the training, it happened on the Calvo Tenorio administration. So you see, I could go on and on these areas.
Governor, but what about the behavioral wellness and health? She mentioned in the speech that her administration got them out of receivership.
Well, again, if you can recall, and I think you folks in the news media know, remember, was it November, December, the last couple of months of my administration, where the court, both the U.S. Attorney's Office, the plaintiffs, and the defendant, and the judge all agreed, hey, it works. This is it. So for all intents and purposes, the receivership ended in our administration. Of course, the final order was made during the Leon Guerrero Leon Guerrero administration. So yeah, we took it the 99 yards, and I'm glad. You need that 1 yard to throw it over the goal line, and you need a strong fullback to do that. So I'm glad to see that progress was made. But again, when it comes to that, when it comes to the landfill, I have no understanding why Tadinko Gatewood waited so long for ending the receivership. But we had been pushing for the ending of the receivership for the landfill as well. So I do believe much, if not all, the progress occurred in the Calvo Tenorio administration.
Gov, is that kind of the nature of the beast, though, where you have politicians taking credit for work that other people initiated?
Of course. Hey, gosh, but it is. There should be a continuous flow of, you don't want to see a hiccup. You don't want to see a slowdown of progress that's being made. Hey, you know what? the Camacho administration started that beautiful JFK school. It was completed in my term, but it was started in the Camacho administration. Beautiful schools, Ukudu. For our administration, problem was we had some, resistance, if not a lot of partisanship between me and the legislature in the 8 years that I served. But remember when the sewage was backing up at Untalon Middle School and the Democratic majority was saying there's no need to fix the school? Well, we fixed Untalon Middle School. Remember all the resistance to Tejan High School by the Democratic majority? Well, we went through and completed the Tejan High School. We had the expansion of Ukudu High as well, so we could fit hundreds more students. The Simon Sanchez, I'm glad to see that with the governor, she's moving forward. We tried so hard on Simon Sanchez. Unfortunately, with the protest by Cortec as a result of the Agana Bridge issue, they put a stop to the progress that we could have had with Simon Sanchez. So I'm glad to see that they're moving forward on Simon Sanchez.
What about the Department of Corrections, Governor? What are your thoughts on that? Because
the receivership ended in our term.
Right.
And I'm glad to see that. I'm hoping that there will be progress. Some of the concerns I had, we did have programs already. I don't know if you recall that we graduated a whole bunch of male prisoners after taking education classes and apprenticeship programs. A whole bunch of them I saw off in 2018 as they were looking for new jobs. In fact, they were guaranteed new jobs in the construction industry. My wife was a partner for a whole bunch of women incarcerees, and they also went through the training, particularly with that Association of Women Contractors, and they had a whole bunch of graduates from the Department of Corrections in terms of females going into a steady job in the private sector after leaving DOC. We had a lot of progress there.
Right.
My concerns of DOC, of course, is, and it's tied into Mandunya Drug Task Force. And again, I want to thank the governor for continuing on success. There was a hiccup when we had Mandunya Drug Task Force. It wasn't only taking out drug dealers and users and criminals in the streets, but we took a lot of dirt out of what was the corruption in government of Guam. Take a look at the Blue House case. Take a look at DOC. We arrested under Mandunya, unfortunately, some crooked correctional officers, some of them at high levels. And we were busting left and right all the drugs that were coming into the prison. And remember, it was either through drones or being thrown over a fence, or unfortunately people were hiding things in certain cavities in their body parts to bring drugs in, but we were catching them. Since the Drug Task Force, Mandunya, was eliminated, we haven't seen any types of arrests or any captures of any drugs going into the prison. And my concern is, hey, I don't believe that there's 100% innocence in terms of folks in the prisons now not taking drugs. So if you're not having any interdiction, does that mean that everybody now is not taking drugs into prison? No, I think not. I think we got to look at, again, establishing this task force, and I'm glad that the governor is establishing a new public safety task force. I guess it'll be Mandunya Drug Task Force Part 2, or maybe another new name.
Governor,
but she's continuing on the success that we initiated in our administration.
What about the Mandunya?
Oh, I got to tell you about affordable housing. And that's what I'm glad to see when it comes to the building of new units for about 150 new families, about the first-time homeowners tax credits. We had hundreds of the first-time homeowners tax credits. In our administration, we built about 2,700 affordable housing units for families. We're hopeful that she can continue on the progress made by our administration.
Gov, just going back to DOC, we're looking at these federal lawsuits, inmates alleging inhumane conditions. Are you concerned that after pulling it out of the receivership that it might appear we could be headed right back that way again?
Of course, we're all concerned. You know, there's been a progress. There's been a lot of movement in my 8 years, and now with the first year of the Leon Guerrero administration, as they continue our progress for pulling out of receiverships. We don't want to see this course reverse. And obviously, with the public defender, U.S. Public Defender's Office in the district court, I'm concerned. You know, when you had Frank Ishizaki after 2 months throwing up his hands and walking away and saying it's inhumane, well, I think Frank's got to take some of that credit. And unfortunately, with the governor, you know, she made some statements that I think that the U.S. Public Defender caught, and that's why, again, starting with all the clients in terms of federal cases, you're seeing this problem occurring in terms of petitioning the court. I could easily see this happening now when it comes to all those that are incarcerated under local law through the Superior Court of Guam. And you know, that's why I think it's very important that if they're to continue in this progress that was occurred during the Calvo administration, that, you know, the governor finds great leadership there. And unfortunately, Frank Ishizaki was very, you know, he was a very opinionated fella, but when it came to doing the job, I guess he looked at the situation. Maybe he wasn't getting the support he needed, but after 60 days, he shook his hands of the situation and left. And of course, made certain comments about the inhumane conditions. I can tell you one thing, under our administration, with folks such as Joe Augustine, Tony Lamarena, Kate Baldassar, it was humane. And obviously the federal receiver and the courts agreed on it. So it's unfortunate that Frank was, you know, at the helm of the ship when it seems to be turning the wrong direction.
So I know that you're saying the theme of the speech to you was continuing the faith and the progress that started your administration. But I got to ask you, is there anything that you see that the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration has done that you want to give them credit for, or that maybe caught your eye?
Well, I think, you know, they're making progress with the legislature on some of the areas, particularly on the hospital. My goodness, the same Democratic majority that attacked our administration when we laid out the problems of not only the impacts of compact impact, usage of citizens using our Guam Memorial Hospital, of the tremendous inequities in terms of reimbursements paid for Medicare or Medicaid to the hospital, showing about a $35 to $40 million shortfall on an annual basis. There was no assistance given by the Democratic-controlled legislature. So I see now that there were crickets when it came to the Democratic majority, when it came to the affirmations made by Governor Leon Guerrero on the same issues that we brought up to the Democratic majority. So I can give her credit that, hey, she's bringing up the issues on the hospital and the shortfalls in our public health system, and you don't see the severe criticisms on challenging the competency or the goodwill and the desire of the administration to fix the problems of our Guam Memorial Hospital and to take it to a new level. So I guess she's had some success. The only thing is, I'm glad you, Chris, from the very beginning, I've always been a concern, and this is what I see with the Democratic-controlled legislature. There's such a thing as called a harmony of interest for the best interests of the people of Guam. And in the Calvo administration, you had this tension, as I'm sure you realize, where because of partisanship, the Democratic majority hit us at almost every turn in issues that I felt were so important for the people of Guam. Solidifying and stabilizing our Guam Memorial Hospital in its shortfalls and other areas. So at least now we see that there appears to be a harmony of interest. What I'm concerned of now is on how they move forward on this. We want to make sure that this harmony of interest is not to the best interest of just the democratic leadership that is in control of this island, but it's in the best interest of the people of Guam. And I can safely say, as governor of Guam at that time, I do believe some of the current leaders of the Democratic majority who fought me on tax refunds, fought me on the hospital issue, fought me even in deportations of criminals that were raping and pillaging our island, that they will, focus more on what is the best interest of the people of Guam and not just the Democratic Party that's in leadership of the island.
Right, and so you're basically saying that...
We need more people like Chris Barnett to check and balance if the Democratic majority out there is not going to do it.
And that's kind of what you're alluding to, is that there isn't really a checks and balances now when you have that Democratic supermajority.
Yeah, exactly. And it could work. I wish we had less partisanship in my term. But at the same time, you don't want to go from one direction, which is bitter partisanship that causes gridlock, to the other side where everybody is agreeing to things behind the Democratic Party office and saying how things are going to move forward. And then in the end, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work to the best interest of the people of Guam. And I'll give you an example. The Democrats were lock, stock, and barrel in going for a single carrier at the cheapest for the GovGuam health workers and retirees. You are seeing now the impacts of a policy set up by the Democratic majority. By the way, B.J. Cruz's public auditor was a part of this, but with a majority, on a plan that so far has netted not too much of a positive when it comes to those that are utilizing this single care by an outside insurer on all GovGuam workers and retirees and their families. And we'll see how this course goes. And now we're hearing about this new Democratic plan for self-insurance for the whole island of Guam. And it sounds great, but so does what Bernie Sanders is saying, and so is what President Obama said, and it hasn't been so great. Maybe we should focus more on the core issues that are affecting our hospital, that are affecting our MIP, Medicaid, government insurance program for the economically indigent, and for also all those folks that are participating in one form of health insurance program or another, both in the public and the private sector.
Gov, I want to go back. You talked about deportations.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of flack about that from,
oh my goodness,
from Democrats. But last night in the State of the Island address, the governor said that she will start deporting criminals back to the FSA.
I don't know why they stopped. And by the way, I have nothing against our immigrants. Guam, like the United States, is built in immigrants. I just got interviewed by National Geographic about a month ago, and what made Guam so beautiful, we have a Chamorro culture, but I'm Chamorro, but I got about 6 or 7 nationalities mixed in my blood, aside from Chamorro, which is how most Chamorros are. So the beauty of Guam is immigrants and what it adds to our island. But at the same time, if you are a non-citizen, and before my term in office, where you go 4 or 5 times to the prison after a rape, after aggravated assault, after some other heinous crimes, and then the feds look the other way, and then you're released to commit the crime again and again and again, it stopped in our administration. And for the first 5 folks, I didn't need the cooperation of the feds. I just said, hey, folks, I'm giving you a one-way ticket, and don't try to come back. And if the Border Patrol lets you through at the airport on your flight back in United from wherever you came from, I've given your pictures to Guam Customs, and they ain't going to let you through, and we're going to send you back and paid for by the airline. After the fifth one, the federal government started working with us. And we worked with this detainer system. We looked at the whole listing of those criminals that were non-citizens. And we worked with the federal government. And I granted about 70 plus commutations. Once I granted the commutation, for every single hour and day that they were continued to be at the DOC, the federal government was paying us $109 a day. So boy, you wouldn't believe how fast the federal government got rid of them when they started paying for their incarceration. So we had a lessening of the pressures in the prison by this cooperative effort of the government of Guam and the federal government. But for whatever reasons, they stopped it. So hopefully, we can continue on the progress made by the Calvo administration.
Right, and so in closing, Gov, I just got to ask you, people watching this, they're going to say, oh, Governor Calvo's hating, Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio had a shot, people didn't want him. What do you say to those?
Oh, no,
critics?
I wish the best for Governor Leon Guerrero. I want to see, because if she succeeds, we all succeed, both in the private sector, which I'm at now, and the public sector. But, you also... You got to be clear about certain things. I'm not here, and I'm not running for anything anymore. But if you're going to say restore faith, I beg to disagree. I think there was a lot of faith that was restored in our community as a result of the hard work and effort of the Calvo Tenorio administration. Sure, there was a lot of problems and issues that continued on after our term. But I can also safely say that when we came in, we fought the good fight. We fought the good fight for the people of Guam from the first day in office till the last day in office. And I wish her the best, but I'm also going to be straight up and call for what I see. And I'm glad you have this blog, because if you're going to get credit for something, then, I'm here to say, wait a minute, you should get some credit, but give some credit. It's due to the previous administration. And then work your game plan. And so far from what I see, there's a lot of stuff that she's doing that's a continuation from the game plan of the Calvo Tenorio administration. So God bless her.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Governor.
All right, you take care.